Wake up! Hurry! My husband's sharp voice pierced the silence of the room. I blinked, confused, still half asleep, trying to make sense of the situation. Ryan stood over me, his face tight with anger. "Why are you still in bed?" he snapped. "The house is a mess. You haven't done anything today, have you? You're completely useless." I sat up, startled. "What?" "I just got off a night shift. I only fell asleep an hour ago." "Excuses," Ryan cut me off. His words were like a slap. "If you're going to keep neglecting everything around here, just leave. You're nothing but a parasite." A chill ran through me as he spat out the last word. In that moment, something broke inside me. The quiet, passive woman I had been for years, she snapped. "Fine," I said, my voice steady despite the storm brewing inside me. "I will." As I stared at the back of Ryan's retreating figure, memories flooded my mind. Memories of how we used to be. It hadn't always been this way. I wasn't always the woman who lived in the shadow of my husband's anger. 5 years ago, we were different. Ryan was kind, thoughtful, even romantic. We met at a mixer, and from the moment he introduced himself, I was drawn to him. He was charming, successful, and full of life. Ryan worked for a major company, and I thought he was everything I had ever wanted. His looks didn't hurt either, tall with a smile that could make anyone's heart skip a beat. We fell in love quickly. He was attentive, always showing up with flowers or planning small surprises that made me feel special. I remember thinking I was so lucky. Within a year of dating, he proposed. I said yes without a second thought. After all, I was 29 at the time, and I had always wanted to be married by 30. It seemed like fate was on my side. The wedding was beautiful. Everything went perfectly. Both our families were happy, and Ryan and I started our married life together on a high note. We moved into a cozy house in a nice neighborhood. I felt like I was living in a dream. In the beginning, everything was fine. I continued working as a nurse, balancing my shifts with household chores, while Ryan was busy with his job. I didn't mind doing the cooking and cleaning. After all, he worked hard, and I wanted to support him. He always appreciated my efforts, or at least he used to. "Your cooking is the best," he'd say, kissing me on the cheek after a meal. "Thanks for packing my lunch. I really appreciate it." Those little words of gratitude were enough to keep me going, even when I was exhausted from my shifts at the hospital. But soon, those words grew fewer and farther between. The first year passed in a blur of routine and small, happy moments. But as time went on, things started to change. Ryan stopped helping around the house altogether. Not that he had ever been particularly active in chores, but in the beginning, he'd at least try. He would help with the dishes or vacuum the floor once in a while. But by the second year, it was clear. Everything had fallen on me. He never cooked. Laundry was something he didn't even seem to know existed. And when it came to cleaning, it only happened if the mess became too unbearable. I was left to handle it all. And on top of that, my demanding night shifts at the hospital. Still, I convinced myself it was just a phase. Maybe he was stressed from work. I wanted to believe he'd come around eventually. But he didn't. At first, I kept quiet. I didn't want to start a fight. But over time, resentment began to grow inside me, like a slow-burning fire that I could no longer ignore. One evening, I came home later than usual. The hospital had been unusually busy, and I was exhausted. Ryan was already sitting on the couch, scrolling through his phone, a frown plastered on his face. "Where's dinner?" he asked, not even bothering to look up. "I'm sorry," I said, dropping my bag on the floor. "I just got back. I'll make something quick." "You've been late a lot lately," he said, his voice sharp. "You never used to be this sloppy. What's going on with you?" I froze. Sloppy? How could he say that? I was doing everything I could to keep the house running, to keep us afloat. My income from the hospital was essential, especially since Ryan's salary had been slipping. But I bit my tongue, telling myself it wasn't worth the argument. "I'm doing my best," I whispered, heading to the kitchen to start dinner. Ryan's attitude continued to worsen over the next few months. He was constantly irritable, snapping at me over the smallest things. I tried to brush it off at first, telling myself he was under pressure at work. But then, something strange started happening. He began coming home earlier than usual, something that had never happened before. He had always worked late into the evenings, but suddenly he was home by 6, even 5 sometimes. But instead of being happy to see me, he seemed even more on edge. He'd come through the door, barely say a word, and head straight to the couch. Zrenia, telefon v ruke. Why are you home so early? I asked him one evening, trying to keep the conversation light. Why? Is it a problem for you if I come home early? His response was defensive, cold. No, of course not, I stammered. I was just surprised. He didn't respond, just continued scrolling through his phone, his face expressionless. Something felt off. Ryan was home more, but emotionally, he was more distant than ever. His irritability didn't make sense. He had less work, yet he seemed more stressed. And then, the complaints started. Why is it always fish for dinner? I want meat. Do you ever plan ahead? It's like you don't even care anymore. I tried to be patient, tried to keep things normal, but every day, the tension between us grew thicker, heavier, until it felt like it was suffocating me. I began to notice small changes in his behavior, changes that sent my mind racing. He was constantly on his phone, smiling to himself at random moments. But when I approached him, the smile would vanish, and he'd quickly hide his screen, pretending like nothing had happened. What are you doing? I asked him once, trying to sound casual. None of your business, he muttered, standing up and walking away. One night, after returning from a long shift, I decided to clean up the bathroom. It was trash day the next morning, and I wanted to make sure everything was tidy before heading to bed. I started cleaning the drain in the shower when something strange caught my eye, a strand of long hair tangled in the drain. I froze. The hair was light brown, not black like mine or Ryan's. A chill ran down my spine. We didn't have visitors. My mother-in-law and my own mother both had dark hair. There was no logical explanation for this. Unless Ryan had brought someone else into our home. I dropped the hair into the trash, my mind racing. Could it be possible? Was he seeing someone else? My heart pounded in my chest as I tried to shake off the thought. But the nagging suspicion refused to go away. I couldn't sleep that night. My mind was buzzing with anxiety, replaying the strange moments from the past few months, the early returns from work, the secretive smiles, the sudden irritability. I needed answers, and I was going to find them. The next morning, I did something I never thought I'd do. I hired a private investigator. It felt surreal, like something out of a bad TV drama. But I had no other choice. If Ryan was cheating on me, I needed to know. I needed proof. And so, I waited. The days dragged on, each one heavier than the last. I went through the motions at work, but my mind was always elsewhere, wondering what the investigator would find. A week later, the call came. My heart pounded as I met the investigator at a small cafe, my hands trembling as I reached for the envelope he handed me. Are you ready for this? He asked, his voice calm but serious. I nodded, unable to speak. Inside the envelope was a series of photos of Ryan with another woman, a young woman. They were laughing together, holding hands, walking into places that weren't meant for just friends. And then, there was the final blow, a photo of them together, inside our home. My stomach turned. There was no denying it now. Ryan had betrayed me in the worst possible way. The man I had loved, the man I had trusted for 5 years, had brought another woman into our home, into our bed. That night, I didn't say a word to Ryan. I couldn't. I was too numb, too shaken. But the next morning, as he sat at the table eating breakfast, something inside me snapped. I know, I said quietly, staring at him from across the room. Ryan looked up, confused. Know what? I know about her, I said, my voice steady. The other woman. The one you've been seeing behind my back. His face went pale. He opened his mouth to say something, but no words came out. He didn't need to. The truth was written all over his face. Ryan tried to deny it at first. He tried to make excuses, saying it wasn't serious, that he didn't care about her. But it didn't matter. The damage was done. I packed my bags that afternoon. Ryan stood in the doorway, watching as I filled my suitcase with clothes, his expression one of disbelief. "Are you really leaving?" he asked, his voice shaky. "Yes," I said firmly. "I'm done." He tried to argue, tried to tell me we could work things out, that we didn't have to end things like this, but I didn't listen. I had given him enough chances, too many in fact. "I've already filled out the divorce papers," I said, handing him the documents. "You can sign them whenever you're ready." I left that day and didn't look back. I moved in with my parents for a while, giving myself time to heal, time to figure out what I wanted next. Ryan called me over and over, begging for forgiveness, but I had nothing left to give him. The trust between us was broken, shattered beyond repair. Eventually, the divorce was finalized. I got what I deserved, my freedom. Ryan. Zrania, on the other hand, wasn't so lucky. Word of his affair spread at work, and soon his reputation was in ruins. The woman he had cheated with left him once she realized he wasn't as successful as he pretended to be. And his career? It was heading downhill fast. As for me, I started fresh. I moved into a new apartment, closer to the hospital, and slowly began rebuilding my life. I focused on my work, pouring my energy into helping my patients, finding solace in the fact that I was finally free from the toxic life I had been living. The scars from my marriage would take time to heal, but I knew I was stronger now, stronger than I'd ever been before. One day, I might consider dating again. But for now, I was content with my newfound independence. I had reclaimed my life, and I wasn't going to let anyone take that away from me again.